Larry Alexander is now joining the program. And Larry, you are the biographer for Major Dick Winters.
Yeah, I wrote a book about his life back in 2005. Yeah, 5, I guess it came out. He was quite an interesting character. I mean, when I sat in the room with Dick, he was very self-effacing, very mild. You know, I expected this, when I first spoke to him, I expected this booming, heroic type of voice coming from this man who's done so many great things. And what I got was a mild, meek little voice that, you know, with a slight Pennsylvania Dutch accent, and that really kind of threw me for a loop. But when you sit down with him, he had this very commanding aura around him, and you knew he was in charge. You would know he didn't force himself to be in charge. He just had that. You knew he was in charge. You know, I can see why his men adored him. Very honest man, very straightforward. Probably the most honest and straightforward man I probably have ever met.
How did you go about researching a man who is as great as Major Winters was, and who has accomplished so much, and yet is so discordant about talking about it? He
researching was no problem. I sat down for hours and hours of interviews with him, and he gave me, when we first got together on this book project, I knew him before we did the book project. I'd met him about 2 years earlier, and the book project was suggested by my boss here at the newspaper, and when I talked to Dick about it, I approached him on the subject, and I said, if you want to do it, okay. If you don't, we'll drop it right here. So he said, oh, let's do it. So he gave me the materials, but what he gave me the same stuff he gave to Tom Hanks for the miniseries and the writers. But then he gave me, and the same stuff he gave to Ambrose. But what he also gave me was a booklet of letters he had written to Dieta Allman, a woman he knew in North Carolina during the war. And these were the kind of the meat of the book, my book, because they told me what he thought. You know, what motivated him. Because Dick did not let you in. You know, he wouldn't let you be beneath the exterior. You know, and so you had to kind of dig that up. And he gave me these letters and said, now you have something Ambrose never had, and I have a whole new spin on his story. And that's where it came from. And a lot of it came from his feelings and his letters and what he wrote and the honesty he put forth in those letters. I told about the man himself more than what he did. And when I wrote the book, that's what I wanted, not what he did, but why he did it, and what made him do it, and what motivated him. And that's what came out in the book.
Well, I apologize right now because I have yet to read your book, but it is definitely on my wish list right now. This all kind of came as a big a shock to me. We're doing a tribute show, and I'm getting the opportunity to not only talk to original members of Easy Company, but you yourself, who probably knows more about the insides and the inner workings of Major Winters than anybody else.
I don't know about that, but I do know him very well from talking to him, and the fact that we had a common bond in a way because we grew up in the same street in the same town. 30 years difference in our ages, but when he told me where he lived, and I thought, my God, I saw that house every day of my life as a kid, and which I didn't know until I first met him. And then I found out we had a lot of shared experiences from growing up in that neighborhood and knew some of the same people.
Wow, I couldn't imagine the feeling that you would get from doing that.
It was quite they say it's a small world, but when you something like that and you meet this guy and suddenly you find out that he grew up in a house that was 200 yards from your house, it was quite an amazing experience.
Yeah, give me something out of the book. Since I haven't had the opportunity to read the book, I feel like I'm eavesdropping on a conversation here, but I would love to get an anecdote or a story or a quote about Major Winters that's in your book, or that you feel is best describes or sums him up, or even gives a glimpse inside the man while he was in deep thought during this happenings.
Well, just his whole sense of responsibility as an individual and a leader and trying to bring the best out in people. That was his biggest strength, trying to bring the best out in everybody he met. He would tell people he would tell kids, he'd go into schools and he'd tell them to his favorite expression was hang tough, which means go out every day and be the best you can be, do the best job you can. And he'd go into schools and he'd preach this to kids and encourage children and people who wrote him letters. He'd always he was always seemed to be there. And like a few years ago, we brought him to Lancaster here in Pennsylvania and took him back to his old high school. And one of the things he got an award from his high school as an alumni. And but then he went into a classroom and we talked about the war and some of these kids, this was senior high school, really had no idea. Only about a couple of them really knew anything about the war at all. And he was quite disturbed about that. And he was telling them, you've got to know more about your history. You've got to be, he was very fiercely proud of his history and the history of the country, and just and he wanted people to be aware of what the price of freedom is and all that. He was always responsible, but he always wanted to teach people either to be a better person or about their heritage, their history. He was very into that.
Give me the name of your book so we can make sure and whoever doesn't have it yet can rush out and get it.
The book is called Biggest Brother, and I got that title from an article I did on Dick the very first time I met him, which said where I said if Easy Company of the 506 Parachuted Infantry were a band of brothers, then Dick Winter was the biggest brother, and that's where the title came from. He was a heck of a guy. I think he'd be the first one to tell you that he wasn't a hero. He'd be the first one to tell you that he didn't do anything that any other officer would have done, but yet that he was a special guy and that he really made a contribution to this world.
Excellent. I appreciate you calling in,
Sure.
Larry. It was fantastic talking with you. And
sure. My pleasure.
All right, fantastic. Thank you very much,
Okay.
Larry.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you to everyone who's stayed with us for the past 3 hours. And thanks to all the guests who joined us. Next week, we're back to our normal show. George Khalil, who played Mo Ali in Band of Brothers, on the show. So tune in then. But we're going to play you out with the man himself, Dick Winters, and that famous quote from his friend, Mike Raney. Good night from Scotland.
And good night from Kansas City.
I cherish the memories of a question my grandson asked me the other day when he said, "Grandpa, were you a hero in the war?" Grandpa said no. But I served in a company of heroes.
He was just a rookie trooper and he surely shook with pride. He checked on his equipment and made sure his pack was tight. He had to sit and listen to those awful engines roar. You ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom. Is everybody happy? Cried the sergeant looking up. Our hero feebly answered yes, and then they stood him up. He jumped into the icy blast, his static line and hook, and he ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom. He counted long, he counted loud, he waited for the shock. He felt the wind, he felt the cold, he felt the awful drop. The silk from his reserve spilled out and wrapped around his legs, and he ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump his neck, the nectar's cracked his dome. Suspension lines were tied in knots around his skinny bones. The canopy became his shroud, he hurtled to the ground.
And he ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom.
For days he lived and loved and laughed kept running through his mind. He thought about the girl back home, the one he left behind. He thought about the medicos and wondered what they'd find.
And he ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom.
The ambulance was on the spot, the jeeps were running wild. The medics jumped and screamed with glee, rolled up their sleeves and smiled. For it had been a week or more since last the shoe had failed.
And he ain't gonna jump no more. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more. Zoom, 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 zoom.
He hit the ground, the sound was splat, his blood went spurting high. His comrades, they were hurt to say, a hell of a way to die. He lay the rolling ground in the welter of his gore.
And he ain't gonna jump no more.